Welcome back. Hello, the mic is working today. Welcome back to another episode of the TWIR weekly podcast. We have questions from our lovely followers single lovely follower over at our Twitter. We have an official TWIR Twitter now. Go and follow. I will link to it down in the description below. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any other podcasts. And let's jump right into the news. We're going to start off with NASCAR competition that wrapped up at Martinsville over the weekend. In the Truck Series, Christian Eckes was your winner after battling with Ty Majeski, who was really the only other contender in the race. Majeski leaves Martinsville as the series points leader outside of the playoffs. So if we had a legitimate championship, Ty Majeski would be leading the championship ahead of Corey Heim and Tyler Ankrum. Interestingly enough, Majeski and Ankrum aren't locked into the playoffs yet. They are up there on pure consistency. And Australian V8 supercar driver Cam Waters made his NASCAR sanctioned series debut for ThorSport in the 66 truck. Connor Jones will be back in that truck for the race at Texas Motor Speedway this weekend. In Xfinity, Eric Almirola got a short track win driving for Joe Gibbs. This sounds vaguely familiar if you watched in 2007. They raced the Milwaukee Mile. Almirola was driving for Gibbs, but Denny Hamlin was supposed to do double duty that weekend, except the Cup race wasn't in Milwaukee. It was in Sonoma, and his helicopter was late. So Almirola started the race. Hamlin went on to win. Almirola got credited with the win, but now he has one legitimately. There was another late race big one where somebody stopped in turn one and just everyone piled in. A lot of smashed radiators and probably not a lot of happy mechanics. So if I had a nickel for every time that a big one happened at Martinsville in the last 5 years, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. Looking at the Cup Series, of course, can't leave NASCAR without talking about the Cup Series. Hendrick Motorsports, a lot of people said this was rigged, but I'm not going to get into conspiracy theories here. The fact is, 3 of Hendrick's cars crossed the line first. It was Byron, Larson, and Elliott. Bowman was down in 8th. This was their 40th anniversary race at their home track. So all the cars were all their base colors were ruby, which honestly they look pretty good. But a lot of eyes are on Alex Bowman because he didn't make it a 1, 2, 3, 4 finish. He was all the way down in 8th. But otherwise, nothing really happened in the Cup race. It was just a snooze fest kind of. Moving on to some NASCAR news, since there were no other major races this past week. No IndyCar, no IMSA, no World Endurance Championship, nothing. NASCAR news, Austin Hill, star driver for Richard Childress Racing in the Xfinity Series, is going to run 4 Cup races in the number 33 car for Childress. One of those entries will be at Texas. This week we have 38 cars on the entry list. The extra 2 cars are Jimmy Johnson in the 84 and Austin Hill in the 33. If you want to go to the North Wilkesboro Speedway All-Star Race, tickets are now available. I expect them to sell out very quick, so get to them while you can. And in an interesting turn of events, the CW is now going to air the final 8 Xfinity races of the season before taking over the full TV contract in 2025. This came out of nowhere today, honestly. The booth will be the NBC booth, so it will be like Rick Allen, Steve Letarte, and Jeff Burton, I think. But it will air, instead of NBC, it'll be on the CW. CW is taking over full-time Xfinity TV next year, and of course they have 100 Days to Indy. Obligatory, go watch 100 Days to Indy. It's trending on Netflix right now because, IndyCar needs TV ratings. And speaking of IndyCar, we had the Indy 500 Open Test this week on Wednesday specifically because Today's session, I'm recording this on a Thursday night. Today's session got rained out. There was standing water everywhere. It was raining pretty bad here. Kyle Larson, fresh off second place at Martinsville, takes a plane up to Indy and goes second quickest, 2 full miles an hour behind Joseph Newgarden, who pulled out a 228 mile per hour lap during a test. So I don't know if that was somewhere where he just got lucky in the draft, because Larson was 2 miles an hour off of him. Because the rest of the field isn't that slow compared to the 2 car, so he must have gotten a significant draft advantage or a track condition scenario that played out perfectly for him to be able to stretch out that much of a gap. But we're gonna have to see if the defending champ is just gonna run away with the race, if Penske's just done a 500i and made those motors wickedly illegal. But we also have some more driver news. David Malukas will miss another race after dislocating his wrist and pulling or tearing some ligaments in his wrist. He will miss Long Beach. He will probably be back for the Indy Grand Prix, although I am not necessarily optimistic, considering that he should have recovered by now, but he still hasn't. Really don't want to see a Kurt Busch situation with his hand. But F2 champ, forget what year, because I don't really follow F2, because there's about 2 drivers that are actually worth following in F2. Théo Pourchaire, former F2 champion, only a one-time F2 champion, because once you become the F2 champion, you can't come back. But he is kind of in between rides right now because there's no open seats in F1, so he came over here to Indy, presumably to get a seat fitting. Then he flew down to Charlotte to test in the Chevrolet simulators. So before he flew to Charlotte, everyone was thinking, oh, he's going to be in the Dale Coyne number 51. That did not end up happening. Callum Ilott was not going to be in the number 6. It was going to be Théo Pourchaire, going to make his IndyCar debut on the streets of Long Beach in the series' second biggest event. Tickets for the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, I'm just going to call it the Big Machine Music City 300 because that's what it is. I don't like calling oval races Grand Prix races. That's just not a thing I like to do, so I'm just going to call it. Well, no, it's actually I just pulled up the website. It's going to be the Music City 275. 206 total laps, 275 miles of racing. Also, IndyCar changed their definition of a superspeedway a while back, from 1.3 miles or bigger to 1.4 miles or bigger. So Nashville will be on the short oval package, which a lot of people are worrying that that's going to turn the race into a pack race, but we're just going to have to see when the cars actually test there. But Nashville, your tickets are now on sale for the Big Machine Music City 275. The season finale for this year's NTT IndyCar Series, and the season finale for the NTT IndyCar Series at least until 2027 due to construction of the new Tennessee Titans football stadium. Moving on, we had some big entry news that brings the 2025 grid up to 29 cars. Prima Racing, you might know them from F2, F3, FR. Add anything to after the letter F to get an F1 Junior Series, and they're in it. So big team over in Europe. They secured 2 engine leases to enter IndyCar a couple weeks back. They have now confirmed 2 full season entries for the 2025 season. They have stated before they want a proven race winner and a fast rookie. A lot of people are saying Alexander Rossi and Logan Sargent as the names that have been thrown around for the two Prema seats. Rossi's contract is up with McLaren at the end of the year, and Logan Sargent looks to be getting kicked out of Williams at the end of the season, at the end of the F1 season. So, Alexander Rossi and Logan Sargent are the two drivers that I've heard the most for the two Prema seats for next year. More driver news for the 500 at least. Dale Coyne Racing and Rick Ware Racing have confirmed that Catherine Legg will drive the number 51 entry for the Indy 500. That car is sponsored by Elf Cosmetics, the first cosmetic company to actually sponsor an Indy 500 entry as the primary, I think. There's also talk of Legg doing some of the other ovals, including Iowa, Gateway, Milwaukee, and Nashville, which I hope happens. I'd like to see Legg in more races. And honestly, that car is one of the best looking cars in the field. So if we get to see the Elf car, it's going to look really good. And even though we have 25 full season entries, we are going to be capped at 27 full-time cars in 2020 or 2020. The grids will be set at 27 cars for the 2025 season with the new IndyCar charter system. So that means it's going to be the two Prema cars that don't have a charter and the two Ganassi cars, and which is probably going to be Armstrong and Simpson, that will have to fight for the two remaining spots. So 25 cars get charters. At this rate, 4 of them won't. So those 4, the two Prema cars, Armstrong and Simpson, will have to fight for the final 2 spots on the grid every week, because this is capped by pit lane constraints. Mid-Ohio only has 27 pit stalls, and Toronto only has 27 pit stalls. I don't think Long Beach has, I think, 29. A lot of the ovals, since their NASCAR fixtures are good, like Indy, you can fit 45 cars in the pit lane. That's never going to happen, but you can fit 45 cars in the pit lane. Texas, you can fit 43 if we go back to Texas. Milwaukee, you can fit at least 43, I think, because NASCAR's been there before. Nashville, you can fit, I'm guessing, at least 40. And Iowa, you can fit, you're going to be able to fit at least 36, because if they didn't have 36 pit stalls, they wouldn't have a NASCAR Cup race this year. So it's mainly the street courses that have the issues with pit lane capacity, and then there's Mid-Ohio, which has frankly been kind of boring the last few years. So that's not really a race that I have, like, look out for this race. It's going to be a banger on my calendar. So we have a couple more items in our news section before we go to a question that was submitted via our Twitter today. Robert Wickens suffered a pretty weird accident by the looks of things at the Nürburgring at the first race of the NLS, the Nürburgring Endurance Series. He was driving a Hyundai Elantra TCR car, and it hit the wall in the final chicane of the Nordschleife, and apparently, according to some images, flipped over the wall and landed upside down outside the track. We were concerned for a little bit because Wickens was airlifted to the hospital, but I think that was just due to the remote location of the track being in basically absolutely nowhere, and the precautions taken because of Wickens' previous spinal injury at the IndyCar event at Pocono in 2018. But he confirmed on Twitter a couple days ago that he is okay, but he got a little bit beat and battered from a strange incident on the Nordschleife. Strong grids are the name of the game for the SRO series in Asia and Australia. GT World Challenge Asia and Australia both have very good grids after very lean at best COVID years. There were 8 full-time cars in GT World Challenge Asia in 2021. It got better a little bit last year, but now there are 30, not 30, I think it's like 33 or 23 cars that are something that ends in a 3 that are going to start every single event for GT World Challenge Asia. Australia, it's a little bit leaner, but you're still getting, I think, 17 full-time cars, which is really good for a series that isn't really that old. It got started in the middle of COVID. It got taken over by Stefan Rattel in the middle of COVID. And finally, before we get to our questions, we have F1 news. Fernando Alonso has signed with Aston Martin until at least 2026, which means that Fernando Alonso will drive a Honda-powered Formula One car, which is a very interesting turn considering that he called Honda's last engine a GP2 engine when he drove for McLaren. But hopefully, I bet Honda will bring a better one because I think those years are behind him. But this might mean if Honda stays in the IndyCar series that Fernando Alonso might get another shot at the Indianapolis 500, hopefully with a team like Andretti or Ganassi that can give him a good car. So Alonso's name was thrown around for the Red Bull seat that was going to be vacated by either Sergio Perez or Max Verstappen, depending on how angry the Verstappen family was with Red Bull. And the Mercedes seat that is going to be vacated by Lewis Hamilton when he goes to Ferrari in 2025. So we have our questions. I submitted this on Twitter just a couple hours ago, and we have Kyle Conley, great follow on Twitter, replied to the question thread, when does Santi Urrutia get an IndyCar drive? Man, I'm hoping for a miracle, but I don't have great news. As long as he doesn't have any money, I really don't think that that's gonna happen. I mean, if teams stop looking for money and start looking for raw talent, Santi's a great option. Would have been an Indy Lights champion had he not been screwed over by Trevor Carlin. But yeah, if teams start looking for talent over money, you might look for him, but I'm not hopeful. I'm not optimistic. He hasn't been in a car. He hasn't been in a single seat car since 2019, I think, or 2018. But I think that will do it for the TWIR Weekly Podcast. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any more content. And buy tickets. If you can, buy tickets to the IndyCar races at Milwaukee and Nashville. Those events need to sell out because they just need to work. Those are events that we've been begging for, especially Nashville with it being on an oval. Those 2 oval events, Milwaukee and Nashville, need to work for IndyCar's future on ovals because if they don't, it's going to be like, oh, we can't go to the ovals. Nobody shows up. We can't go to ovals anymore. Yeah, thanks, Mark Miles. But buy tickets if you can. Times are tough right now, but if you can, make sure to buy tickets for Nashville and Milwaukee because those are 2 great tracks. And buy tickets for North Wilkesboro. That's a classic NASCAR track that actually produced some good racing last year and got repaved this year, and it'll be even better. So that concludes this week's edition of the TWIR Weekly Podcast. I've shortened the show quite a bit, cutting out mainly filler words and a 2-page note sheet. I only have about half a page of notes right now, which is perfect because I'm starting to find that sweet spot of video length that people will actually watch. So thank you for listening if you've made it this far. Don't forget, subscribe, hit the bell, and I will see you in next week's show, if not earlier. See you then.